Hey guys, welcome back to Rachel Reads. My name is Rachel. I love to read more Christian fiction, and I'm finally filming a recent reads. Although it's been like 3 months, it's gonna be fine. I'll take my time, and we can just edit later. So I'm sorry, future me. But I have around 40 books to go over for 3 months. It's gonna be fun. There's only one problem. I don't know which order because I'm filming on my phone, which has Goodreads. I took notes on my tablet, and I have this stack of books, which I don't know if you can see. So I think I might just go over all of the ones on the tablet first and then do the physical ones so I can just hold them because I like holding books. And I'll start right and I'll end right, but the in-between is not right. But it's all on my Goodreads, so make sure you go check out my Goodreads to see the order I read these in, as well as all of my reviews. So let's go ahead and get started. The first book I read is Then There Was You by Kara Isaac. It was a very cute, clean Christian rom-com. It was very funny. It had a lot of faith. There was also some good topics discussed in that book. And it was set in Australia, which I found really fun, and I really liked that environment. It just wasn't my favorite. I would love to try more by this author, but it wasn't a favorite. But I did like it. I gave it 4 stars. And then the next book I read is Mind Games by Nancy Mehl, or Mehl. I say Mehl. There was a lot of action. It was a good book 1, and I can't wait to get into the rest of the series. There wasn't too much romance, which I was fine with because I still really enjoyed it. And there was some pretty good faith content. I don't remember too much, but I know there was a little bit more than normal for some books. But overall, it was really good, and I gave it 4.5 stars, and I really want to continue on with the series. Next book I read is Daily Devotion by Sandra Orchard. I give this 4.5 stars. It was a little bit slow moving just for me, but it had really good suspense with a lot of faith content and a little bit of romance, and I really enjoyed it because there's a lot about like tea and just a lot of fun antics. And I'm actually reading book 2 currently, and I am loving it, so I'm really excited to just continue on with the series because I have book 2 and 3, and I have another book 2 and 3, but I'll get to that in a minute. The next book I read is Paper Hearts by Courtney Walsh. This is one of her older publications. It was a fun Christian romance, and it definitely had some harder subjects of like grief and stuff. I think it was grief. It's on my Goodreads description to be for sure, but overall I did really enjoy it. I give it 4.5 stars. Past grief or injuries, and it was handled very biblically, and it did have a little bit of faith content considering it is an older publishing. I know with some of her newer books it's more just clean, but I do recommend trying her older published books because they have some faith content, at least the one I read. The book I read is When the Day Comes by Gabrielle Meyer. I gave this book 5 stars, and I know there's some mixed opinions because there is a trigger warning for marital assault. It's not described at all. The only way it's described is we see the after effects when she's talking to someone about it, but it's never described. You just kind of know that it happens, but other than that, it was so good. It's one of my new favorites of the year. And the thing is that made me okay with the book is because it's a good faith content. There was a lot of faith content in this book, and it just felt like God was a part of the story, and we could just trust His will. And that really inspired me, and I thought it was a great book because of that. The next book I read is All That It Takes by Nicole Deese. I gave this book 4 stars. It's not my favorite in the series. The first book was my favorite, but it was a good Christian romance with a little bit of faith content. I just personally like book 1 better, but if you like Nicole Deese's books, you'll obviously like book 2. Next book I read was The Words We Lost by Nicole Deese. I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely love this. There wasn't a lot of faith content, but there was a lot of hope and a bright future for the characters, and the author's note was really sweet and really good. There are trigger warnings for like grief and death, but overall it's just a really good book, and I love the whole like manuscript and story planning. I thought it was so interesting, and the past timelines just really felt like summer and just made me like happy. So it was a really good book. I do recommend it, and I love this cover so much. Next books are Let It Be Me and Turn to Me by Becky, and I gave these books 4 stars. Overall it was pretty good, and there was a lot of good faith content. There are Christian romances. It's just not my favorite. The next book is Surfing Up Love, which is a novella collection. I really don't remember a lot about it because I read it fairly quickly, I want to say. Overall, it was pretty good. The novellas are Karen Witemeyer and Jen Toronto, Tracy Peterson, and Regina Jennings. Karen Witemeyer and Jen Toronto's, they both got 5 stars, and then Tracy Peterson and Regina Jennings got 3.5. But it doesn't mean I dislike them. The other 2 were just my favorite. I love Jen Toronto, and you're going to hear a few Karen Witemeyer books later on. But I've also enjoyed some Tracy Peterson and Regina Jennings books. The next is The One Who Knows Me by Joan and Embola. Personally, this is a very disappointing book because it is marketed as Christian fiction, and there is a lot of faith content in the book. And as someone who reads purely Christian fiction or clean fiction that expects no cussing, I was really disappointed when this book started cussing and using language because the character who said the words was not Christian, but there was faith content and it's marketed as Christian, so I personally believe that shouldn't be in there. So that was really disappointing. I DNF'd it, but on Goodreads they gave it 1 star. The next book I read was The Lost Girl of Astor Street by Stephanie Morrill. I adore this book so much. It is a 1920s clean YA mystery book. There are some heavier topics of like death and grief. There are some heavier topics of death and grief in this book, but it's very clean, and a lot of books that are clean tend to be like hope-filled, I guess is what I would say. But I just love this, and I love the main character. She wasn't frustrating, but she was really fun, and I just enjoyed seeing her, and it was just a really sweet story. The next book I read is the first 3 books in the series, and that is Weddings by Bella by Janice Thompson. Overall, it's 5 stars. Books 1 and 3 are 5-star, and book 2 is a 4.5 just because it was a little bit of a lull, but not a bad book. Still really enjoyed the series. These books are absolutely hilarious. Janice Thompson, I've come to learn, writes just funny books, and they are very enjoyable, and they are just kind of funny. You laugh, but there's also some good faith discussions, and there's a little bit of romance, and it's always a good time. The next books I read was another Janice Thompson series. It was Weddings by Design. But they're, again, really funny. You have a really big cast of characters, and you kind of see some of the characters from a different series pop up. Overall, just sweet stories, and they are so fun. You're gonna laugh, you're gonna enjoy it, you're gonna read some good faith content. Overall, it's just a great time, and I really recommend Janice Thompson for people who like contemporary romance that is Christian. Next book I read are No Other Will Do and Worth the Wait by Karen Witemeyer. There's also another book, but I'll get to that in a bit. They are fun and laughable, and they do have some faith content, and then they are very light-hearted books, and they are historical romances with Christian. Overall, they're pretty good, I would say. Books 1 and 1.5 I gave 4 stars. I'll get to the second book in a little bit, but overall, pretty good. Short Straw Bride by Karen Witemeyer. Again, absolutely funny, just hilarious. I give this book 4.5 stars. There was a lot of romance in this one, but it's not that it wasn't clean. It was just a little bit more romance. I personally like more faith. As you'll kind of see, I love faith content. I love seeing God in these books, and I just, it wasn't bad. I do recommend her books. And then the next book I read, which I read this when it was like pretty high on the Christian booktube side of things, so absolutely enjoyed Where the Road Bends by Rachel Fordham. I give this book 4.75 stars just because it took me a little while to read and get into. But I knew the girl's chapter, I can't think of her name, but her chapters felt very lyrical and light. I do want to put trigger warnings out there just for, there's like mentions of like a saloon and that type of thing, but it's not described. It's very good. I enjoyed it. There is a little bit of faith content, not as much as I would like to see, but it definitely was in there a little bit, and at the same time you could see like the hopes and the dreams for the future, kind of like Jeremiah 29:11. You kind of see that in these books, and I really enjoyed it. I adore this book. It's A Fool in His Own Name by Sandra Orchard. This book was hilarious. I had the next 2 books in the series, and I literally cannot wait to get to them. These books just made me smile. Book 1 is so good. It was funny. The situations definitely aren't realistic, but that's why we read Christian fiction. The suspense was amazing, and there was just a little bit of romance to start things off for the series. I know it's over. I do, and I'm kind of sad, but I like Nate better. Just throwing that out there. But the next book I read is The Sound of Light by Sarah Sonnen. I gave this book 4.5 stars. The only reason I knocked a half off is because it took me like over a week to read. And if a book takes me that long, I'm not that interested. It really like makes me slow down reading overall, which I don't like. But overall, it's a good book. There was some faith content. It's historical. With a little bit of romance and action in there. I definitely could see her newest series, which is When Twilight Breaks, When Leaves Fall in Paris, and Sound of Light. I could definitely see them becoming a like movie series. The next book and the last one before I start moving on to my physical copies is A Shadow in Moscow by Catherine Ray. This book is very disappointing because the author was coming locally and I was going to go see the author, maybe get a copy of the book. And that's A Shadow in Moscow. I knew some of her newer books weren't maybe Christian, but they were clean. They never cussed. There was never anything wrong with them. So I read this book going into it with that mindset, and then it ended up cussing and using language, so I DNF'd it, and it was very disappointing to see that, and I hate seeing all these authors who were Christian or who claim to be Christian, and then they just start throwing this in their books. It's very disappointing, because there have been books that I've read, there's at least 2 or 3 that were just clean and not Christian, and I still love them because they were clean. There's no language. It was very clean and great books. So the first books out of the physical copies is the last 2 books in the Out of Time series. I know I read this right after the Southern Charm Readathon by book lover Amanda, which was a fun time. But after that, I finished the Out of Time series for the 3rd time. If you've never read Nadine Bretta's dystopian, you really need to, because a lot of y'all have read some of her fantasy, but if you've never read her dystopian, you really need to check them out. I know Celestia has read them and she loved them, and I don't know who else besides her, and if you haven't read them, please check them out. Book 1 is A Time to Die, book 2 is A Time to Speak, and book 3 is A Time to Rise. These are amazing books, and the premise is said the main girl Parvin has 1 year left to live, and it kind of all starts out from there. Next book is Chance of Loving You by Terry Blackstock, Candace Calvert, and Susan May Warren. So, Terry Blackstock wrote just romance. There was no suspense, and I loved it. There was some faith content. It was insta-love, but as I'll get to in a little bit, this is in my top 2 favorite insta-loves. I love the first novella so much. It was just so good, so funny. Just a great time reading it. It's very laughable, unrealistic, but very fun. And then the next one is by Candace Calvert. Wasn't my favorite, but I enjoyed it. It was okay. There is some faith content throughout all of these. The second one was pretty good, and I do recommend trying this novella, and the third one was okay. I do know with the third one that I felt like I was thrown into the middle of a story and didn't have any of the beginning, but overall, pretty good book. Enjoy it. Definitely recommend the first novella. Really good. And the next book I read is one of my new comfort reads, and that is The Lady of Galway Manor by Jennifer Deibel. So this book is about Annabeth DeLacy and Stephen Jennings. She is apprenticing at this jewelry shop, and I really love this book. There's some great faith content, a little bit of romance, and it's history set in 1920, but this is set in Ireland, which I found really interesting. And I really love the pink cover. Pink is just really pretty, and I like it. If I'm in a reading slump and I need to pick me up, I know I can go to this book. It's just comforting. I highly recommend this to anyone. If someone needs like to buddy read this book and just read it, trust me, this is a go-to book. Absolutely wonderful comfort read. Amazing. And then the next books I read is the Four Kingdoms series by Melanie Cellier. I love her books. I've only read this series and the Beyond the Four Kingdoms. Yeah, but the books, I only have 4 of them. I'm lending one to my sister, so hopefully she'll read that. I'll leave her channel down below. But the books are The Princess Companion, which is Princess and the Pea retelling, 5 stars on my reread. The Princess Fugitive, which I think I gave 4.5 stars, which is Little Red Riding Hood, which was very interesting. Book 3, The Princess Rumpelstiltskin retelling, 5 stars, my absolute favorite. If you read any of these books in the series and you don't care about spoilers, Read book 3. It's my absolute favorite. If you read my Goodreads review, you know why I love this book so much. Book 4 is The Princess Game, which is a reimagining of Sleeping Beauty. I think 4 stars, pretty good. Not my favorite in the series. I think it's my least favorite, but considering it's my least favorite at a 4-star, it means it's still really good. Book 5, The Princess Search, which is an ugly duckling retelling. That book I think is like a 4.25. Really enjoyed that one. Pretty good overall. And yeah, these are just like clean fairy tale retellings. They're such a fun time. Next book on my stack is A TaylorMade Bride by Witemeyer. I think I gave this book 4.5. I'm not for sure. I want to say it's a 4. Maybe it's a 4. The next book I read is A TaylorMade Bride by Witemeyer. I think it's like a 4.25. It's about J.T. Tucker and Hannah Richards, and it's an enemies to lovers Christian historical romance. They remain enemies for a little bit in this book, which is a little frustrating in some aspects, but overall pretty good. Definitely not my favorite Witemeyer, even though I still need to get to Fairest of Heart. I really want to read that one, but pretty good. Definitely recommend Witemeyer if you like Western or that kind of like historical Western idea. And the next books are some more Janice Thompson, and that is Stars Collide and Hello Hollywood. I love these books. Janice Thompson just writes amazing books. I think this is a 4.5 or 5 stars? 5 stars. This one's 5 stars. This one's 4.5. I didn't enjoy this one as much, even though I love like the whole Greek characters. I found that very fun and fascinating with all the food. And this one, our main character is a movie star, and so is her love interest, but then there's a lot with her grandma. It's just hilarious. I love the mentions of these, and when you read Janice Thompson books, read them in order. Read them in order of publication, because she does mention some other characters, but her books are so good. The next book I read is Heart of the Lion by Witemeyer. 4 stars. This was just a fun, sweet read. This is definitely one of like her sweetest books. It was just very like heartwarming, very fulfilling, just a fun read with great faith content. The ending is definitely different from how you would normally picture it, but overall really good. And I love learning about the telegraph and like how deep it goes, because I also know what it is and all that, but just like the whole behind the scenes of operating, it was just very interesting, and I do recommend. I read another Witemeyer, and that is Stealing the Preacher. I gave this book 4.5 stars. Yeah, I think I gave this book 4.5 stars. This one is about Crockett Archer and Joanna Robbins. Literally the premise of this book is the title. Her dad kidnaps him for her birthday. It's very funny. This one just felt slower moving, but it's absolutely hilarious. Like, this book is so funny. It's absolutely hilarious. So, definitely recommend. I think out of the two, this one's my favorite for multiple reasons. Great faith content, because he is a preacher, and you just kind of see. I loved how our main character spent time with God in church and out of church, and I just thought that was amazing. And the next book I read is a new favorite. If you saw my short, this book came early, and that is Counting Down by Lynette Eason. 4.5 stars. I love this book. I love this series so much. This is book 4 in her Extreme Measures series. I know, Amanda, you haven't read it yet, but you really, whenever you get to the series, you'll love it. And I know Lindsay from the blog Books for Christian Girls, she has read at least the first 3 books in the series, I'm pretty sure. And the second book, I agree, is the best. This is the best in the whole series. This is my second favorite, though, because there was a lot of good faith discussions, and I love seeing that in a book and just seeing how much they talk about God and how God is part of their lives, just not something added to the story. And then the last 2 books I read are new releases, well, fairly new releases. I haven't read book 3 because it's not out, and I know Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails has read these books, and they are Remember Me and Finding Us by Tracy Peterson. When I first started reading again, I read one of her series and loved it. If I reread it, I don't know if I would love it as much, considering it's one of the first. The series is Pictures of the Heart. This is book 1 and book 2. Book 3 hasn't come out yet, but this is about the Brownie Girls and the expo in 1908? This is about the expo and them selling the Brownie cameras. They take photos, and that was just very interesting. It was something I've never heard of. but very good. This one is about Addie and Isaac, kind of like Where the Road Bends. There are some missions of that lifestyle. I think that's described because you actually see her escape in like the first chapter, which isn't a spoiler. But it's a very sweet story. I think I give this 4.5 or 5. Yeah, I get 4.5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Definitely recommend these books. And then Finding Us, which is book 2, and this one is about Eleanor Bennett and Bill Reed. And they both love botany, and it is an insta love, kind of like the Tracy Peterson novella. This is the insta love that I actually liked because it felt semi-believable because God was part of their story. And I forgot to mention, fan content, really good in here. Like, it's really good in this book. Highly recommend. But this one is like a 4-star, I want to say, 4.25, just because the ending fell a little bit lackluster. Not that it was bad, but it was just like it kind of ended, and I had to go back and reread it. And sometimes I don't mind, sometimes I kind of do. This time I did, but I still really enjoyed this book. So that is all for today's video. I don't know how long this is gonna be as I'm filming. Hopefully editing will cut it down a little bit. This will probably be one of my longest videos, but that's okay. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. So glad you got to watch this video. I hope God blesses you today. I'll see you next time. Bye.